Hi everyone, my name is Tony. I'm one of the fitness training instructors for our agency. I'm here today to address a common nutrition question that I received from a lot of our nighttime officers via email. And before I get into that, I wanted to first start by saying that I'm a certified health fitness professional. I'm not a licensed nutritionist, so the only information I give is general non-medical information with regard to nutrition. But for any of you who are looking to sit down with a nutritionist, there's a great one over there at the health clinic, and I highly recommend that you sit down with them because they're very knowledgeable and they're great folks to work with. So let's look at the question I received. There's an individual who is on a calorie-restricted diet, and they want to know what macronutrient ratios will lead to the most satiety or least hunger in order to reduce their own body weight or for a weight loss diet. So as you can imagine, this might be pretty challenging if you're headed out to one of the restaurants or the local stores within our facilities. But for a lot of you nighttime officers, this might be pretty easy because a lot of the facilities are actually closed. So you're kind of left with no other choice but to pack your own lunches, which I'm all for. But for a lot of you, hopefully for a lot of your daytime officers, you're getting into those habits as well and trying to make healthy choices and trying to pack your own lunches. So before we get into any information or what macronutrient ratios work best to satisfy our sense of fullness, we should first understand what ratios will keep us from developing chronic diseases. Now, according to the National Academy of Sciences, the acceptable macronutrient distribution range that we should be consuming for carbohydrates should be anywhere between 45 and 65%. For fats, it should be anywhere between 20 to 35%, and for proteins, it should be anywhere between 10 to 35%. With that said, we have a lot of flexibility to adjust our ratios to meet our caloric needs or caloric restriction needs for weight loss, while also avoiding putting ourselves or any sort of health risks. Now, with regard to our question, feeling a sense of hunger while on an energy or calorie-restricted diet can certainly be problematic. So we need to understand what modes of consumption might provide us with the best sense of fullness. So let's look at some of the research that's out there. There's a study by Martins and Plantega that was conducted in 2012 that did just that. In their study, they looked at different modes of macronutrient consumptions and the effect each one had on one's sense of fullness. A total of 10 men participated in their study, and each were randomly given a mode of macronutrient foods, which consisted of either solid foods served with 750 milliliters of water, or liquid blended foods blended in 500 milliliters of water served with 250 milliliters of drinking water. For participants who received the carbohydrates, they were either given a solid form of peaches or a liquid blended form of peaches. For participants who received protein, they were given either a whole steamed chicken breast or a blended chicken breast. And for participants who received a fat food, they were either given a steamed high-fat pork belly or a blended high-fat pork belly. Now, among all the macronutrient modes that were given to these participants in this study, it was actually the whole chicken breast that was reported to bring the most significant satiety or sense of fullness. The results in this study are pretty consistent with a lot of reports of other studies. For instance, Martin and colleagues also performed another study using the exact same protocol a year prior. Except this study, they only looked at the effects a high-protein meal had on hunger suppression. In their study, they examined 10 participants as well who consumed either a steamed whole chicken breast or a blended steamed chicken breast. And just as the earlier study, this study also found that solid foods were more beneficial in suppressing hunger. Additionally, both studies also found that participants who consumed a solid form of protein also suppressed their desire to want to eat. So as you can see, solid foods and protein provide us with the best sense of fullness over liquid foods. According to Zhu and colleagues, one of the reasons may be because solid foods break down more slowly than liquid foods. In other words, the faster the foods pass through the body, the more short-lived the sense of fullness might be. So now that we have established that protein provides the best sense of fullness for us, above all macronutrients, what should the overall macronutrient ratios be if we wanting to stay with a calorie-restricted diet and trying to lose weight? Well, if we look at the examples shown by Wetcherly and colleagues conducted in 2012, we should be able to come up with the best ratios. In their study, they examined 8 random control trial studies that compared the effects of high-protein, low-fat diet with standard protein, low-fat diet. Of the high-protein, low-fat diets, the mean dietary macronutrient ratios were 31% for proteins, 41% for carbs, and 28% for fats, while the standard protein, low-fat diets had a mean ratio of 18% for proteins, 57% for carbs, and 25% for fats. The results of the study showed that it was the high-protein, low-fat diet that provided the biggest bang for the buck. Not only did the higher protein diet provide the most sense of fullness, but more importantly, it provided the more reductions in weight loss, more reduction in fat mass, triglycerides, and even less than the reductions of fat-free mass. As you may have noticed, in this study, the high protein group held a low carbohydrate ratio and a moderate ratio of fats. So if you choose to apply these ratios as part of your diet, you're certainly not going wrong here, but remember, we have the flexibility to change our ratios to whatever we want, so long as we don't put ourselves at health risks by stepping outside the recommendations for macronutrient ratios, and we continue to make healthy choices as part of our daily diet. The general take-home message from these studies is that choosing a high-protein diet consisted of solid foods primarily will provide the greatest sense of fullness in a calorie-restricted weight loss diet. So I hope a lot of this information was helpful for many of you. If you have any questions, remember the fitness team is always here to help. My name is Tony Compton, and I look forward to seeing a lot of you train at the athletic facilities.